But getting right into it, what are business licenses and permits anyway? Like, why? What are they? So your business license is a city spot, like a city license that you get. It's a tax license that you file with the city. Your permits, you might be filing those with the city, you might be filing them with the county, you might be filing them with the state. But all of the permits that you and licenses that you need to get allow you to sell online from home at an event, to wholesalers or retailers that are going to buy your product and resell it, or from your own storefront. And yes, if you're selling online, you have to have permits too. Even if you're selling, like maybe you don't get into food or you have a side business that is not food related, if you're selling on Etsy or Amazon or anywhere, you still have to have a business tax license and the right permits with the city or county that you live in, um, to be legit. They don't ask for those when you are creating your online stores, but it's important that if somebody from the city or county figures out that you are selling online, or from your home or at an event illegally, that you could get fined for it, and your business could potentially shut down. First fine is, it's usually just a fine and it won't get shut down, but if you keep doing it, like, they will shut you down. So it's always good to go through this process, because it lets your local government know that you're in business. And it's really important that we keep the public safe and healthy. So if you're cooking out of your home and you're doing this massive operation and you end up starting a fire because you whatever, like, that could be a huge public safety issue. So the permits make sure that you have the right equipment, that you have the right zoning, that you have the right everything in process to be doing business legitimately. um and so, okay, hold on, I think I missed something. uh but makes everything legitimate for your business, and that makes it easier for you to get into catering or to wholesale or to actually sell at a farmer's market by having the right permits and going through it the right way. uh, so some of the basics of what you need is everything that people were just talking about. Whether you have a food business or not, you need most of these things, depending on where you live and what type of business you are. So if you, whether it's your business, like whether it's yourself as a sole proprietor, or you are an LLC or a C Corp, if you are doing business under a name that does not have your last name in the business name, you need to file a fictitious business name. If you have a business, like a product under an LLC that's not the same as the LLC, you need to file a fictitious business name or a doing business as. You go through the county clerk's office to do that. The costs are going to vary depending on what county you're in. I live in Alameda County. Filing it, I believe, is $45. It's something very easy to get. But we'll go into each one of those here in a second. So just gonna do a brief overview. The business license is, or business tax license, it depends on the city that you're working in. You go through the city. The costs are going to vary depending on what city you live in, but that's your business permit to operate. That's the one that says like, hey, I have the tax license. I gotta keep track of my sales so that I can send in my quarterly taxes to the city. If you're selling physical items, which everybody here that's interested in food is doing, you need to get a seller's permit. So, and for every event that you do at a different location, you need to get a temporary seller's permit. Um, a temporary seller's permit is good for 90 days. We'll go over that here in a second too. But then there's also a resale permit as well. The resale is if you're buying large quantities from a wholesaler and you're just reselling their product. You're not actually creating anything. You're just doing that. And the resale permit allows you to do that. All three of those go through the state of California. They're all free. You go through the state franchise tax board, um, and then you need to get a tax ID, employer ID. If you have gone through the LLC process, you probably already have your employer ID, your tax ID through the state. And then or through the federal government, the US government, the IRS. It's free to get that tax ID or permit. If you're a sole proprietor, I highly recommend you getting an employer ID through the IRS. It's free, but it separates your social security number or your government number from your business to help keep your social security off of a bunch of documents that you could be signing. The business tax structure or the business structure, excuse me. So whether you're sole proprietor, LLC, C corp, etc., um, you go and get that through the state of California. Those costs are going to vary depending on what kind of structure you have. But for the most part, it's you have to pay an $800 tax or a fee every year uh, to the state for whatever structure that you have. If you're a sole proprietor, you don't have to get a business structure. You don't have to pay that $800. You're essentially your own business. And then the zoning permit. So that's the next thing that you need. That's with the city. That is going to vary. The price is going to vary depending on the city, but it's going to make sure that you were zoned correctly. And then your catering or your health permits and other food permits you might need. That's going to be dependent on the city and county. Um, if you're in an unincorporated area, which I don't think anybody in here is, you go to the county instead of the city for that. But like if you're in Berkeley, for instance, they have their own health department. You go to the city of Berkeley. If you're in any other part of Alameda, you go to the county of Alameda. And if you're unincorporated in any area, any of these permits and licenses that you need that are cities based, you go directly to the county because you technically don't have a city government. All right, so your fictitious business name. You can see an example right here at the top right of my fictitious business name for my company as a sole proprietor. Uh, you basically go to the county. Um, if your business does not have your last name in it. So my business is the pop-up guide. It does not have my last name in it. If it was Aaron's the pop-up guide, I'd still have to get a DBA or a fictitious business name. But if it was Lander's pop-up guide, then I would not need a fictitious business name as a sole proprietor. But you must get it in the county your business is located. So whether that's your home, an office, or your storefront, you got to go to the county, you file for that fictitious business name, and each county is going to be a different cost. In San Mateo specifically, it's $46 for your first fictitious business name, and then $12 for each one after that if you file them all on the same day. So if you have several businesses under one LLC or several businesses under your sole proprietorship, then it's more cost effective to file all of those right away because it'll keep your costs down. Otherwise, you have to go back in and pay the $46 for the next one that you do. And then after you pay, you must publish your DBA in a local media outlet for 4 weeks. And that the costs are going to vary depending on what outlet you're using, on how you're doing it. You can use um, dbastore.com and they'll do everything for you. I think it costs about $120 or something. If you do it yourself, you go to the legal notices section of whatever media outlet is operating in your county, and you pay them between $20 and $80. They run that for 4 weeks. Once that is confirmed, then the county gets that confirmation and they send you an email or a notice and let you know that your business name has been accepted. And after 5 years, you're going to have to renew that. So the point of the fictitious business name and doing the filing is to let other people in the community know that you're starting a business under this name, and they have those 4 weeks to protest it. if they have the same name as your business. And it's just really trying to not create a competition between people and make sure that like, hey, if somebody's name is copyrighted or trademarked, like they have the right to come out and say within that. Um, so keep that in mind that you need to make sure that you have that DBA, the fictitious business name, set up as you're doing business because it makes it so much easier to just open business accounts because of that and start accepting money. And that's like one of the first things that opening a business account they ask for is your DBA. They ask you for all these other documents that we're going to go over as well, but make sure that if your last name is not in your sole proprietorship business or your or you're operating under a different business within your LLC or your C corp, that you have to have a DBA for that. Your seller's permit, like I mentioned, those are free, and that's if you're selling any tangible goods. If you're selling in a location for less than 90 days, though, you need to get that temporary seller's permit that I mentioned. That seller's permit is based off of the main location that you're at. The temporary seller's permit is anywhere else that you're selling a product for less than 90 days. If you're selling for more than 90 days, you have to renew that. But it's free to do. It's underneath of your seller's permit. So you go to the same portal, you just add in a new location. To be honest, I've never seen anybody actually ask for a temporary seller's permit. It's something that's fairly new in the grand scheme of things within the franchise tax board, but it is something that is uh, required by the state. Um, so make sure that you do it and you just build that into your your process of when you're doing a pop-up or selling in a location that's different than the one that you might have. Those sublocations, they're called sublocations. They really easy to add in. Both the seller's permit and the temporary seller's permit take less than like 5 minutes to fill out. And then, like I mentioned, if you are reselling any products, buying wholesale and reselling, that you need to get a reseller's permit. Um, Here is a link that you guys will all get this tomorrow, but it's a link that just shows you for new permits and license holders what you need to do, filing and making payments, managing your sales. It's just a really good resource to have. I'll put the link in the chat, but you'll get these slides later. And then uh your tax ID, your number, your employer ID number. Again, that's free. It really protects your social security number, so you're not putting out every your social security or your personal government ID number out there on everything that you are signing and the agreements that you're doing. Um, this is necessary for every single business that's not a sole proprietor, so you have to have one. But if you are a sole proprietor and say you start over your lifetime 10 different businesses, you are still going to have the same employer ID. It will be the same for the rest of your life. It just protects your social security and your personal identity more more than it than if you're using your social security number on all those documents. So your business structure then, that is what we're talking about when we say the LLC, which is a limited liability company or sole proprietor. With a sole proprietor, you and your business are essentially the same. You don't need to file anything with the state to run your business. You have to get these other permits and everything though. But as a sole proprietor, you don't have to file anything with the state or pay them to be the sole proprietor. Other business structures include different types of partnerships and corporations and LLCs and nonprofit corporations. Each one of those has different benefits depending on what type of business you have and what your overall end goal is for your business, whether that's to raise lots of capital. Well, they're going to require you to at least be an LLC, if not a corporation, depending on what type of capital you're trying to raise. If you are trying to um, limit some of your tax liability and not get double taxed as a sole proprietor. An LLC could be more beneficial for you. It really depends on where you're at with your business, what you can afford. If you're an LLC, you again, or I mean, or a corporation, or a nonprofit, you have to pay $800 every year at the beginning of the year. So if your business isn't making that amount of money, it might not make sense for you to be an LLC. It might make more sense to be a sole proprietor, but it really depends on your business and your end goals. And business lawyers can help you best figure out that. So reach out to Renaissance if you're interested in learning more about that, or there's several other companies or organizations that can help you figure that out as well. But I'm not a lawyer, so I can only teach you about this stuff and not give you like the best advice because I don't have those credentials and I don't want to get those credentials because I do not want to be a lawyer. But all of these things are different types of business structures that you need to think about when you're developing your business. Your zoning permit versus your building permit. So your zoning permits, if your business, basically the city that you're working out of wants to make sure that where you're producing any of your products is zoned correctly. So they don't want you to be doing industrial, chemical, whatever in a residential area because it like a uh, uh, there's public safety issues that happen. Um, then it allows you to start operate. The zoning permit allows you to start operating or beginning the build out process of getting the building permits if what you're trying to do is zoned correctly. And then the difference between a zoning permit and a building permit is your building permit, make sure your construction is up to code. So if you're starting a storefront, you have to go through this process. If you're just working out of your home and you're not doing anything uh, other than just baking or whatever that's permitted, then you just need a zoning permit because you're not building anything. But any build out needs to have that building permit and also have an environmental assessment done on the property to make sure that it wasn't built. Excuse me. It wasn't built in an area that should be rezoned. And then both of these, you go through the city to get them. The price is going to be based on the city that you're going to, and with the building permit, the types of construction that you're going to do will depend on the costs that you have. Um, I missed. Okay, so then I missed the business tax license on here. I don't know how that got deleted. But your business tax license, that is with the city itself that you're operating out of. You go to the city's website that you have to pay a fee that's dependent on the city's website, but that lets the city know that you're starting to operate. You give that business tax license when you are doing these other parts of the process as well. Um, these are all really easy to get. They just cost some money. If you don't have the capital, then you need to find resources to find the capital. If you do great, it'll make it way faster to do it, but they're having all of these processes in place are going to help you with your overall business structure. Now we're going to get into the permits that you can get as a food entrepreneur. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? Because we've gone over a lot of information.
Uh, Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, perfect. Sorry, at the end it was saying catering slash health permit. I'm not sure. Did we talk about that?
yeah, that's what we're going to go over right
Oh, that's all. That's it. My apologies.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Any other questions though? I know it's a lot of information. But once you start doing it and you break it down, like you can get all of that stuff done in a half hour, or not a half hour, a half day. If especially if your county offices are close to the city offices where you're operating. If it's not, it might take a whole day with driving and all of that. But it's very much doable. You just have to sit down and do it. and get it done. And once it's done, you can start operating. So now to everything that is food specific. We got about an hour left. Yeah, we're going to 7:30. Um, might be able to wrap up early, but depends on what questions that you all have. There's a lot of information here, and it gets kind of confusing depending on what type of business you have. So the temporary food facility. Okay, so let me. I have this a little mixed up on here from where everybody is in their business. So if you are selling products from at an event, uh, you need to have a some kind of kitchen that you're operating out of. And once you have that kitchen that you're operating out of, a commercial kitchen of some sorts, and that could be out of your home, that has to be permitted. It could be a commissary kitchen or community kitchen that has to be permitted. Or it could be a pop-up kitchen, like at a bar or a restaurant that closes at certain times, and you're taking it over at another time. You have to be that has to be permitted as well. And then you can start producing out of that permitted kitchen and then taking it to an event to set up a booth space or your food truck or food cart, depending on what your product or service is. But you have to have that permit first to be able to then go set up at a temporary food facility. Um, in San Mateo County, having a micro enterprise home kitchen operation, which is basically a restaurant out of your home. Um, you need to have, if you're doing a temporary food, a temporary event, so pop-up markets or farmers market or whatever, you need to have a temporary food facility permit in addition to a commissary kitchen. They won't let you sell what you're producing or let you package what you're producing or prepping, excuse me, prepping what you're serving out of your home. You still have to do all the prep at a commissary kitchen or community kitchen, and then you can go and prepare everything on site with the right equipment. Oh, but the temporary food facility permits you need to get if you don't have a food truck or a food cart and you're operating out an event. Your cottage food permit, which I think some of you might be interested in, as well as the micro enterprise home kitchen operation permits. Both of those permits allow you to cook out of your kitchen. There are limitations to what you can do with both uh, in terms of how much money you can make a year in revenue. So both of them are limited at 50K per year. I'm trying to work with the state to get that change or the counties to get that change because that's not a lot of money. Um, but it is to help you boost your sales, boost your exposure, so that you could potentially then go and get a retail location later on. A cottage food permit is very limited. It's only prepackaged foods that you can do. So you're producing everything, you're packaging everything there in your kitchen, and then you are selling them to a local grocery store or at the farmer's market. Um, with that cottage food permit, if you're going to the farmer's market and selling directly to them, you still need to get your temporary food facility permits, especially if you're offering samples. But that's also limited on the types of products you can use and the uh, types of ingredients, excuse me, that you can use within your product. So you can't use meats or fish uh, or dairy with the cottage food permits. You can with the micro enterprise home kitchen, but you can't with the cottage food. The micro enterprise home kitchen operations, the MICOs are what they're called. Those allow you to basically have a whole restaurant out of your home, but you are delivering the food or having them come pick up. You don't have a restaurant per se as a like sit down where people are coming and eating, but you're either delivering or you're having it delivered with DoorDash to other people. Um, this provides more flexibility, but again, if you're going to an event, you still have to have a regular commissary or commercial kitchen that you're working out of that's not your home, particularly in San Mateo County. Other counties, each one's a little bit different and not everybody has that type of permit. But it's always good to look at your options of outside of your home too, because you don't necessarily want to be using your home as your business base with lots of products that you might be creating. So just keep that in mind as well. Um, so those are those two types of permits that are home based that you can do. The next type of permit that you can get as a food expert or a food business is a catering permit. This allows you to work out of a commissary kitchen that has to be permitted itself, that then you can go and deliver that food and set up food and do catering or office meals or whatever uh, based off of having the commissary kitchen or commercial kitchen, and then you going and selling directly to your clients. um, you're and there's no limitations on kind of what you can do with the types of food, but if you are selling liquor, you do need to have your alcohol and beverage control license, or your liquor permit to be able to do that. Uh, it sounds a lot more difficult to attain than it is, but it's really not, especially if you um I'm not selling lots and lots of liquors. That could take months to get to even get that license. But if you're reselling it or you're doing whatever, you're like having that liquor permit is important to have, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It really depends on the county that you're in and with the states. But if you are doing any liquor, alcohol, beer, whatever, you do need to get that permit. It can take quite a long time if you're just doing it standalone and whatever. And you if you've seen all of those the signs in the restaurants and grocery stores or corner stores where they're applying for a permit and they have a big huge sticker in their window or on their door. And then you see it there for months. It's because it takes a couple months to actually go through that process. But for just like one-time events that you might be doing, it's very cheap, and you go through the city, excuse me, called loud noise, the city police department. It's your local, like whatever the closest police station is near you and where you're going to be selling the alcohol. Um, in cities like San Francisco, I don't think San Mateo offers it, but the city and county of San Francisco had a pop-up kitchen or has a pop-up kitchen permit that you need to get. I believe it's only like $25, but if you're operating out of like a bar or a restaurant and using their equipment, you need to get a permit for the time that you're doing that with them. I believe that permit's like $25 or something in San Francisco. Oh, and then there's also the mobile food facility permit. So that could be a food truck. There's also the food cart permit. So where ice cream cart or coffee cart, where it's not actually rideable and has an engine to it. Those permits allow you to operate within the county that you're working in without getting extra permits for what you're doing. If you're operating in a different county, though, so say you're going from San Mateo to Alameda, you have to go through the Alameda Health Department to get those two different types of permits with the food trucks or the food carts. Um, you also have to file for a permit if you are doing a temporary, like a street fair or festival or a pop-up large pop-up event. You have to get another permit, but it's not going to cost any money to get the that permit. It's just to let the organizers and the health department know that you're going to be at that and that you have already been permitted to operate out of that truck. You'll still have to pay a booth space or fee to operate with the event organizer, but you won't have to pay for the actual health department fees that a temporary food facility permit would that they do have to pay for. And then you have to also get your food handlers permit with any of these permits, a food manager certification. All of those are, you have to take tests and quizzes. They're pretty simple. I've had done this several times. They last for, I believe it's 2 years or maybe 3 years. Then you have to recertify for it. They cost, I think, $10 to do online, and it's really just basic common knowledge for things that they give you the information to study beforehand, and then you are able to look through it, make sure that you know, like some of the questions are like, well, how can you supposed to store food off of the ground? Well, you have to have at least a crate underneath of it that's a certain size. I think it's 12 inches or so, and then you can store dry food and whatever on the ground unless it needs to be refrigerated. It's also like what temperature things need to be cooked at, hand washing, all those different types of things. Uh, So Osario has a question. Let me look that up. Having the business license, is that valid only for your city? Then you'll get a TFF for a specific county. Uh, they don't go together. Um, so you have to, so the business license and the TFF goes together, or either one. So the business tax license is city specific. Not all cities, if you're operating out of them, require you to have a business tax license to operate in their city. So let's say you're doing a temporary event like a street fair or festival. Not every city requires you to get that. Some of them do. Those permits can cost usually between like 80 to $120 to get. So make sure that you're talking to your event organizer if you're getting that TFF, and if they're the ones talking to the city and the county, so they're going to know what licenses you might need. The TFF is specifically for one particular event. Those TFFs, the temporary food facility permits, last for 90 days. And so if you're doing a pop-up farmers market and it's a weekly farmers market, you're there every week, you only have to pay that fee once over the 90 days. Then you have to repay it again for the next 90 days in general. If you're doing it once a month, you get 3 months free depending on when the days fall within that 90 days. So it could be two, but it hopefully will be three for you based off of how the days of the month lie down. But they're not contingent on each other either. You can get a temporary food facility permit for an event in a different area and not have a business tax license for that area. But to operate out of your community kitchen, commercial kitchen, um, the retail storefront that closes and they're letting you come in and bake in the morning and they just have a restaurant at night, like you still need to have your business tax license associated with where you're making your products. I hope that answered that question. Are there any other questions on what we've talked about so far? Because next we're going to go into legally kind of the things that you need to do for food. Well, okay. All right. So either it means I'm explaining this very well or everybody is just lost. Hopefully it's me explaining it very well. Um, so what you need to do legally to be able to operate, like we mentioned, the temporary food facility permit, uh, it has like the fees that you're gonna have to pay for that are gonna be dependent on the number of days that the event is taking place or that you're gonna the event's going to be happening, the type of food that you're producing, and if it's packaged or not. So if things are hot and prepared or they're not prepackaged, that's going to be a higher cost than the ones that are prepackaged. And that's mainly because this county or the city is assuming that if you've had packaged goods already that you've already got the permits that you need to operate already, and they don't need to come in and examine and take temperature control and make like you don't have any propane or anything like that. So it's a much lower barrier to do an event, a temporary event, than it is for if you're using dairy or using hot prepared foods that or even just prepared foods. It doesn't have to be hot. Um, that there's a completely different risk to the community, and so they need to come through and check what your setup looks like, what your booth space looks like to make sure that the public stays safe, that nobody gets sick. The temporary food permit is pretty easy to get. You just have to make sure that you have the right everything that they ask down. And that you're set up by the time that the event starts or when the uh, inspector comes by. In San Mateo County, you're a little bit luckier because it's such a big county. Same thing with Alameda, that it's kind of hit or miss if a food inspector comes by or health inspector. But if you're in San Francisco, be prepared to get your booth checked out no matter what, because they will come by and they will not let you open unless you have met all the requirements. And all of that stuff is documented on the permit that you fill out anyway. So you have to put in what's what your recipes are, how you're cooking it, how it's being stored, and then they're going to go through beforehand and look and make sure, like, oh yeah, okay, they're doing it correctly. This is how it's supposed to be, and they're going to give the permit a go with the event organizer, and then you're okay to operate the day of the depending on the product and how it's sold as well, you might also have to have tents set up where your food truck, have proper cooling and heating equipment, have hand washing stations, have disposable utensils, have 3 compartment sinks as well. So when I say 3 compartment and a sink, you think of like a big like what you see in your kitchen. Doesn't have to be that. It just has to have 3 compartments that have the soap, the sanitizer, and the rinse, and they have spouts so that you can pour down for the hand washing stations so that it's coming down. So it's really easy to do. It's not that big of a deal to do it. It's just has to be part of your design of your booth space so that you are or your overall wherever you're doing your business, it just has to be built in. And like I mentioned, each county is going to be different, but they will most likely need a catering permit and a licensed kitchen for you to work from, uh, depending on your business and what you're doing and how you're selling it. Um, we talked about the cottage food permits and then the pop-up kitchens. That's just the local health department. But that's any questions on this? That's basically the gist of most of the permits that everybody in this class will need. There are other specific permits depending on the type of product that you have that you might need to get. But I don't think anybody in here will need to do that. But does anybody have any questions before we do some examples?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
In terms of, I guess like storing the ingredients, is there a specific protocol that you need to follow, or is there something that I guess like a certain location that you have to have those ingredients that it has to be, I guess, approved?
It depends on what permits you have and where you're operating out of. If you have a cottage food permit or a MECO permit, the county is going to come in, or the city, depending on where you live, is going to come in and they're going to inspect your kitchen. Take note that they are really far behind, so it's like a 6 month wait or maybe less now, but it was 6 months for a while to actually get people through that process of having that inspection. If they approve everything, they're going to look at where your dry storage is, where your cold storage is, etc., and they'll let you know like, hey, what you need to improve. Luckily, there are like specifically in San Mateo County, there's funds out there to get your product to become green, and green business certification group that I can't remember off the top of my head. They will replace certain equipment within your home for free, or your business too. Like if you're operating out of a retail storefront, they'll replace things to get you up to green and sustainable standards. So there is funding out there if you don't have the right equipment that you need to be able to properly store things. If you have are working out of a community kitchen or a commercial kitchen, they're already going to be permitted, and those places are going to offer at an additional cost, usually depending on who you're talking to and working with. They're gonna they might for an additional cost have you storing the products there overnight or however long that you need it. If you are storing products at your event, it is dependent on the type of product that you have. So if you have hot prepared foods, it's got to be at the right, like the 100, I think it's 165 degrees for most of the food. It might be warmer for some. If it's cold foods, it needs to be under a certain temperature, and that has to be cooled or heated with the proper equipment. So they'll come in and like you'll have to write that stuff down on if you're storing it during the event on the permit that you're applying for, and they'll let you know like, okay, well, this is not going to work. It's not the right thing, but you need to get that information in as soon as possible so that they can review it, and then you need to make adjustments depending on what they say you need to do. And also, just because you get permitted to do an event in, like, say, San Mateo County, doesn't mean that that permit is going to, like, the same process will apply to San Francisco County. San Francisco County is a lot more um, strict on what they can do or what you can do. So, if you were able to do it in San Mateo, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to do the exact same thing in San Francisco.
Gotcha,
I
that
hope
makes
that
sense.
answered
Thank
your.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
sure. All right. Uh, Stacy, as if you fall under prepackaged, can samples be prepackaged too? Or if you plan on sampling, does your samples need to be prepackaged too? Is what I should have asked. Okay, see, my bad. I should have read it before speaking. Um, you your samples do not need to be prepackaged. You do have to follow specific health code guidelines. Like, I mean, obviously, you need to be wearing gloves. They need to be in separate containers. Like, each person needs their individual container or utensil. They can't be like sharing things. Like, it's just basic
Right.
things for if you're sampling without prepackaging. However, because you're sampling in that way, you do have to your fee for the permit increases by up sometimes $100 depending on where you're doing
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yeah, it's a big difference. So if you can pre-package all of your samples, that makes it a lot easier for you to not have to pay that extra fee. But it also
Okay.
you're having like you're spending time and more money, like you're spending your time, your money packaging things, and then you're buying the packaging as well. So you really need to evaluate like, does it make more sense for me to pay this extra 50 to $100 because I'm sampling without it being prepackaged, or does it make more sense? Like, am I because I could buy you could buy the packaging in bulk and have like for fairly cheap even, and just have that with you, and that could last you for a few events, but you're still taking the time to pre-package all of that. You can't do it on site.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Okay, so Cal Gold is going to be one of your best friends when looking up what permits that you need. Granted, keep in mind that each city and county is going to be different, and each type of business is going to be different, and they're going to give you an exhaustive list of every single type of business you could need for the city you're operating out of. You might not need every one of these, but they're going to give it to you, so you need to go through and identify, okay, I need this one, and this one. I don't need this, I'm not at that like capacity, or I'm not doing that type of business. So they'll like it can be really confusing, but this is your go-to resource to find all the forms or all the permits you might potentially need. So let's just take San Bruno as an example, and we're doing food. Let's just do cottage food operation because some people have those questions. So this is going to be San Bruno, San Mateo County, cottage food operations specific. So business tax license or tax certification, you'll definitely need, you go through the city, your land use permit, zoning clearance, that's through the city, you'll need that. Your cottage food operator permit, so that's the whole permit that you might need. There's actually two different types of CFOs, the cottage food operator permit. There's a class A that allows you to engage with direct sales, meaning you're selling directly to a consumer, and there's a class B, um, where you can sell both directly to the consumer, but then also to a wholesaler or a retailer that's going to sell your products, say a local grocery store. Um, you also need your fictitious business name or you're doing business as. Uh, you need a temporary food facility permit if you're doing any events that's happening, and you're setting up a booth space and selling the product, whether it's prepackaged or not. Everybody needs to get that permit if they're selling food. Um, Again, though, if you have a mobile food facility or a food cart, you still have to apply for the permit, but you don't have to pay anything for those permits. You need to make sure that you have the labeling requirements with the county. So they're going to ask you for the ingredients at a minimum. Uh, they don't necessarily require you to have a nutritional label in San Mateo County, I believe. But they do, like, you still have to have the ingredients in there. Like, especially, I mean, if you have nuts in your product or dairy, which you can't use dairy, as a cottage food permit, but if you have nuts or allergens within your product, those need to be labeled so that people with those allergies can read and see it. The label, like the font needs to be big enough that people can see it. Last thing you want to do is to get people sick. You need the training that goes along with that. Um, it's Once you've registered, you need to complete this training within 3 months and then every 3 years of getting your food operations. If you have employees, you might need to do this. If your cottage food permit, you only are limited to having one full-time employee, and that's not counting family members or household members, but anybody that might be coming into your house to help you prepare. You can only have one full-time person doing that. And if you have paid them, you have to register these. If you paid them more than $100, then you have to do that within 15 days. Um, which again, cottage food operations are limited to 50K in sales. So realistically, having a full-time person doesn't make any sense. If it's somebody outside of that, because you're limited in how much you could pay, well, 50K is a full-time job, like there's all your money right there. The seller's permit, which we mentioned, the state income tax information, you have to fill that out. That's part of the seller's permit that you'll go through with that training. If you have employees, you have to make sure that you're considering the wage and hour laws and workers' compensation as well. Getting the EIN, which could either be your social security number or the government issued one, is something that you should get. Um, for residency, that's really not gonna apply to anybody. Unless, well, with the CFO, unless you're hiring somebody that is a resident, but or not a resident, and you're hiring them. So this is just for cottage food permits. What you need. Each other one, we'll go through the. Let's see if they have the micro. They don't have it. Um, restaurant. That's the next closest one. Stacy, yes, you can go from class A to class B at any point. You just have to go through that process um with the state or with the county. Um it shouldn't be hard to do. It just allows you to like it just gives permission to sell at a retail location, a retail location that is not your pop-up food space. Uh, Ariana, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question. For the micro enterprise, I'm so sorry, I forgot the entire name of it, but something the one where you can have dairy and stuff like that, like the cottage food one.
Mhm.
Um, I know that, well, my first question in general, if I wanted to like sell at a pop-up place for food, um, but the location was in, like, say for instance San Francisco or Berkeley, where it's a different county from the county in which I'm situated in, and I'm probably going to get all my permits in. um how would that work? Would I just get a temporary pop-up like permit for that county, and that would I'd be okay with everything else, or does it kind of depend?
So if you're doing a Miko, the micro enterprise home kitchen operation, you have to have you cannot operate, you cannot prepare any of the food in your home kitchen that you're going to go sell hot at, I mean, that you're going to go sell anyway, at any pop-up markets or anything like that. You have to get a temporary food facility permit, and then that allows you to prepare everything on site or sell your prepackaged foods there. But that has to be tied to an actual commercial kitchen, not your Miko kitchen. You can have, so you will have to go get all of the food, have a commercial kitchen that you're working out of, and that could be an empty restaurant. It could be a commissary kitchen that maybe at a church or a school. It could be at a community kitchen, like Eclectic Cookery. There's several in the peninsula as well that you rent out by the hour. And then that's where you get, oh, that's when you're able to get the temporary food facility permit then. But you have that has to be tied to a particular kitchen. You have to get a sign off from the kitchen operator that you are okay doing this event because you're operating out of that. But you can't use your micro enterprise home kitchen operation to permit to go and sell out of events. What it does allow you to do is sell directly to consumers, either through delivery apps like DoorDash or through your website or whoever, and then you're going and delivering the product to them, or they're coming and picking it up from you as like a takeout restaurant. But that's the biggest limitation for it is that you can't do anything like you can't really use your kitchen to sell products outside of the community that you're working in. You have to get those temporary food facility permits and have the other permits tied to uh, the commercial kitchen that you're working
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. There's lots of limitations, and they don't make it easy to be an entrepreneur, especially a food entrepreneur. But it's makes sense because they're trying to save people's lives.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that people don't get sick. Here, there's let me where did that last one go? Okay, I'll just go through this again. So for sidewalk and street vending, in terms of let me see if I can have both of this. Okay, perfect. Uh, so it's the same thing with this is that they're building and construction permits if you have a restaurant that doesn't really apply to street vending and sidewalks. So like I said, like when you're going through this resource that's here and looking through the permits, make sure you're going and getting the permits you actually need and not taking time away from your business by going after permits that you don't need. Like if you're not building anything out or doing any construction, you do not need this permit. But if you are starting a restaurant or a coffee shop and you need to get the equipment in there and you want like the whole build out that you need to do to make your business, you would have to go through that process. So it's really specific to your business and what you're trying to do. Um, so business tax license again, uh, restaurants, you definitely like any retail location, you need to go through a fire inspection. If you're selling the like at a street fair or festival, you will have to go through a fire inspection, but that goes through the event organizer. They organize that, and you need to make sure that like you have a fire extinguisher if you were doing hot foods, that everything's set up and the public is being safe. Um, so, but if you have a restaurant, you definitely need to have the fire department come in and inspect your stuff. The organizer for events will handle that whole process. Um, if you'll need to if you're discharging wastewater into a sewer within your area, then you need, or within your restaurant, then you need an industrial wastewater discharge permit. That's just another permit if you're operating a restaurant. The zoning permits, the business property statement. So that's everything that your equipment, anything that you lease, any supplies, any fixtures, you need to put that in to the county by the first of each year. The DBA, waste generating permits, waste and weights and measures. So none of this is, well, you do need to have this for a restaurant specifically when you have temperature controlled issues and weighing issues. For other ones, you might not need it, but that's really dependent on your business. Uh, Authority to construct and operates permits, ABC permits, so that's the license. To if you have liquor in your restaurant, that takes a minimum of 45 days is what it says here. The beverage tax as well. The corporate or company filings, discrimination laws, industrial activities, stormwater general permit. As you can see, there's lots of permits that might be specific to your business if you're doing a restaurant. Um, but this will help you kind of go through and be like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, and then get the process going. All right, thank you. Have a great night. So we have about 20 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but hopefully it helps you kind of understand the landscape. It's really going to be specific to your business, any of the permits and licenses you need. So make sure you're using Renaissance and Skyline and all the other resources out there to help you guide yourself through that entire process.
Hey, sorry, I have a quick question about I guess do you know of any resources or best practices going to a commissary kitchen or to maybe I guess speaking to commercial kitchens and asking or just I guess getting involved and being able to use their kitchens?
Yeah. So I would recommend there. Let me see if there used to be a website. I don't know if it still is. What was it called? Well, this is not an exhaustive list. but so let me put this in the chat. This is Cloud Kitchens. Just doing a simple Google search for commercial kitchens in the Bay Area can help you identify um, the different commercial kitchens in there. Cloud Kitchens has several different kitchens, and then there's other ones like in Bayview Hunters Point. There's Eclectic Cookery, which has two locations right there. And it's where like all the food trucks that you see based in San Francisco, and all the caterers, that's where they all operate out of. What I'd recommend, there's La Cocina too for those that are women and or minority entrepreneurs. That is a food incubator where you can go in and use their kitchen, and they also take you through some programming as well. Let me put that in here. But the best thing to do is just identify all the commercial kitchens that are in your area that makes sense for you and your business, and go and check them out. Schedule a time to walk through their kitchen, see if they have the right equipment, see if they have space, even like when are their availability to host you, and how much does it cost. Some can be $25 an hour or so, which doesn't seem too bad, but then you're also paying yourself and or anybody else that's there, and then that could turn into a lot more money than the $25 or the $100 that you need to spend for 4 hours running out the kitchen. But make sure that, like, if you need storage, asking them about that, like have a list of questions that are going to help you with your business, and then go in there and ask them. And just do like if you're running an apartment, or renting car or whatever it might be, or buying a car, that you're gonna be you have a list of questions for those people. So have those same different questions and try to beforehand identify the needs that you have. Like, do you have specific equipment that you need to have um to operate, like mixers, like a certain size of mixers, or whatever. And once you understand what you need as well, it'll make it easier when you go in there to be like, oh, I really want to use this kitchen, it's going to work better with our flow. And then when you get at a certain point where maybe you're selling lots of wholesale, maybe going into a co-packer might be better for you and your business, because they can help you pack or produce and manufacture and then pack all the products that you're selling, and then maybe even distribute it depending on the co-packer that you might have. But it's all about really trying to create a relationship with the kitchen that you're going to be working out of. If you notice that there's kitchens in your neighborhood, or in a certain corridor that or like a restaurant that closes, that's only open at night or only open during the day, go in and ask them if you can rent out their kitchen in the evening, and take it over, like, because you want to use their commercial kitchen license and you need to have a commercial kitchen, or maybe see how you could work together. Like, there's several bars that have kitchens that they don't actually operate out of, but they are certified as commercial kitchen and permitted as commercial kitchens. So if you notice that they have something, like, ask them, hey, do you mind if I come in and use this? Like, what could it be if I came in once a week or twice a week or however often, operated maybe a restaurant out of here, and then you're able to do catering, or delivery to other people, based off of that. So, um, those are the best tips that I have for communicating with these types of people, or these types of organizations and groups. But even thinking about, now that I guess that's not all I have, but the like churches and schools too, they might have those opportunities available where they have commercial kitchens in there, and you're going and you're part of the congregation, or it's in your neighborhood and you're asking them, hey, can I operate out of here? And you pay them for rent. It really depends on the needs and what you have. I hope that answered your question.
No, it did, it actually did. And a follow-up question, if I have my own equipment, let's say the kitchen doesn't have the proper equipment that I need, but I have my own equipment and I want to bring it in, is that going to be problematic for any permits, since I'm bringing that equipment that I'm going to be handling food with from one location to the other? I guess they're concerned about bacteria, or I guess any other contamination to it.
I don't believe so. Um, as long, well, so you do have to like for the equipment, your business for especially like if you have that business property, you do have to submit that information on a yearly basis to I think the county, um, to let them know that they have it. But like if you're bringing in this extra equipment, you just have to get permission from them. And if they have specific standards that like, hey, this has to be, I mean, hopefully you're sanitizing it when you're moving it and then when you bring it into the restaurant. But if that's like if they have extra standards that they have to have, that would be up to the particular commercial kitchen. But I don't think that there's an actual like that you have to get an extra permit unless it's like some like big huge industrial thing. But that shouldn't even be. I don't see where that would be a big problem.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just thinking that if the permit would have to also be per wherever I'm store like housing the equipment, that like if somebody would have the inspector would have to come in to check to see where I'm housing that equipment, even though I'm not actually using that equipment at a location, I'm taking it somewhere else. That's where I was a little concerned about.
Yeah, so if you're not using the equipment, the health inspector doesn't need to see any of that or come in and inspect it. It's just where you're using it. They'll come in, they'll check. I mean, if you're using propane or gas or whatever, they'll check the lines. They'll go through and make sure there's no mold and any of that type of stuff. But if it's just being stored somewhere and then moved later to a place where you're operating out of, the storage is not going to be inspected. The place is inspected regularly, like once a year or two. But if there shouldn't be a problem. However, now that I'm thinking about that, like San Francisco, I can see you maybe running into a problem with that because they do have very, very strict health and environmental standards. So just keep that in mind that you just want to ask the owner of the space. One, if they give you permission to bring in that equipment, and they might actually let you bring in the equipment if other people can use it at the same time, and that you might be able to work out a discount on your rent that you're paying, an hourly rent or your storage fees or something like that if other people are able to use it.
Gotcha, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was interested in like the baking aspect. And I know there's a lot of specific equipment that you can use with baking, so that's what I was just asking. Make sure. But what you said is makes sense. You know, it's going to be specific to the actual like I guess city or county or wherever that situation is happening.
Yeah, and I mean, look at bakeries around you and see like where are you located? I don't think you actually got to introduce yourself earlier.
Oh yeah, no, I was having an issue with the microphone, but yeah, I'm located in San Mateo County area, and it just like baking is what I'm interested in.
Okay, yeah. So I would look at the bakeries around there and see like which ones like if you're able to use their equipment too. Um, because that might be better. I mean, all these commercial kitchens are gonna have some kind of bakery type uh industrial equipment to be able to use. But if you're like specifically like trying to do a big like a small little bakery trying to do, they're gonna have the equipment that's specific for you so that you're not like moving around all this other stuff that's not relevant to you, your company. But um good a good example. Oh, I can't minimize this. What? A good example is a old not old, but I guess she was a mentor or mentee of mine for an organization that I was a part of, but she started this bakery that I just put into the chat. It's a bagel company. And she had very specific equipment, and she could not find a commercial kitchen that she needed for the bagel production, the way that she wanted to do the bagel production. And so she opened up over on College Avenue in Oakland Berkeley border or so. This bagel shop, and she's turned it like this is now a national thing after pandemic and everything. Like she's done amazing work with it, but she's a great example of how she took her specific need and developed a concept. However, she was working and selling the bagels from a commissary kitchen beforehand and just realized that she needed her own equipment. She was making the money to be able to go out and get the equipment. She got outside investments. She took accelerator programs from the different groups or organizations that have those programs and really leveraged that to turn her brand into a national brand. And last year, she was her first year on the top 50 LGBT owned revenue or LGBT owned companies in the Bay Area based off of revenue and a variety of other things. So like this, she did this in a very short amount of time, but if you have a specific need in equipment, like find if those people have it. If they don't have it and you have it yourself, bring it in, ask them if you can bring it in and use it there. And then potentially get a discount if you allow other people to use it. If they don't, you're probably going to have to pay some kind of storage fee because you're taking up real estate from other things that they could be making money off of.
Hey, that makes absolute sense. Thank you so much for that, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question. Um, Going back to the comment you said about the co-packing, because for my candy specifically, which is the only thing I sell, um, I was considering going through a co-packer. By doing that, would that eliminate the requirement of certain permits? Like, would I still need a cottage, a CFO, if I'm having the co-packer do it?
Nope, you would not need a CFO. The
Mm,
cottage food operator permits, because it's not
mhm.
you're not doing anything out of your house at that point.
Right.
Because they'd be making it, they would be packing it for you. You might do the delivery or they might distribute it for yourself. But if you're going through that co-packer, they're gonna do everything for you. So but if you're going to an event though, you still need to have the permits to operate out of the event. So the temporary food facility, if it's
Mhm.
prepackaged samples, then that cuts your cost down a little bit. If it's you're doing just samples and uh out there for everybody, then that's going to
Mhm.
increase the permit cost, but you're still going to have to get that because they're not going to be doing the events for you because it's not their business. They're going to help package or manufacture, package, and potentially distribute.
Right. But that, I mean, I feel like that would be super helpful for me with not having to file for a CFO or something. And then I would just have to pay for a TFF for my pop-ups, right? I figure.
Yeah, well, you'll have to get your like food handlers permits and those different or certifications. Which are like I said, they're really easy. They're like $10 to
Yeah.
get, and it's just something that's good to have anyway. Uh,
Mhm.
but that it base for you, it would basically eliminate most of the permits that you need. The co-packer will let you know too, like if there are specific permits that they need based off of your product. And I'm saying this for everybody, not just for you, Stacey.
Mhm.
So they'll let you know, like, oh, you need to have these permits. But for the most part, they're going to have the permits for everything that they need. It's just if you're doing things outside of their facility with your product, that's when the other permits happen. So, like, say you end up
Right.
starting to do a big catering program where you're coming to corporate campuses and doing things that are not associated with an event in particular, then you'd
Mhm.
have to get a catering permit because you're taking it offsite in a different capacity than a temporary food facility permit would cover. So it will eliminate the amount of permits that you need, but you'll still need to get them, and it's really dependent on what your business operational and sales structure and business model are.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for sticking with us for the entire 2 hours. I hope you learned a lot. I know it was a lot of information. This isn't necessarily the most exciting class to teach. I'm pretty sure it's not the most exciting class to learn from, but it is necessary to get your business off the ground, especially with food permits. And the food industry, they want to keep people safe from a government standpoint. So make sure that you get those permits and then utilize all the other resources that are out there that are going to help you get the money you need to have a successful business to bring in the amount of revenue. Sorry, my allergies are crazy today.
Bless
Get
you.
the thank you. The amount of revenue that you need to bring in because uh food isn't cheap and starting a business isn't cheap, but there are resources out there to help you start and grow and expand. And there's a lot of workshops out there to help you that I teach as well, that other people teach too, to help you really develop your strategy. Because doing cottage food permit and operating like that, that's a great starter way to start something and get it going. But if you're really gung ho and that's not thinking big enough for you, like there are ways like co-packers and there's community kitchens and things like that that can help you get to the next level that much faster to where you want your exit to be. So I always encourage everybody to think about their goals for their business and then think about what your exit strategy for your business might be. That could be going IPO, getting an initial public offering and going big. It could be staying private, keeping it a private company and passing it down to family or friends. It could be selling the business at a certain point. Whatever your exit strategy is, then creating goals to get there can make it a lot easier by having your end goal in mind and like breaking it down into piece by piece so that you're getting to the that level and that you're having continuous success versus versus
Bless you.
thank you doing the same thing over and over again for years and years and years and not getting any new results. Um, I have a one last little uh anecdote that I want to share, a story about one of my vendors that I've worked with for over a decade now. She started as a small food stand. Well, she actually started going door to door selling tamales during the recession in 2008, 2009. And then she wanted to become legit and she wanted to bring more tamales. So she started a food cart, did that on the Embarcadero for a while. Then she started doing pop-up events, and people were loving her pop-up or her tamales. And then she started doing catering, and I got her a bunch of catering gigs. One of actually the biggest, one of the first biggest check I ever paid to a vendor was to her. It was for like $12,000 to do this tech fair that she was providing tamales for, and it was awesome. And then she started doing outside lands and using her tamales and started selling. And I was volunteering with her because I got a free ticket, and her tamales are great. So free food and free music was awesome. And she started off at the smallest stage. The next year, they asked her back to the bigger stage, and then the next year after that, she's at the main stage, and she sells out of tamales halfway through the day and has to get them shipped in because she can't carry all of them in her trucks and all of this stuff. But now she has a production facility in Hayward, and she is slinging like 40,000 tamales a month. She's selling to Whole Foods, Safeway. I just saw her. I just bought some of her tamales down the street at the little grocery store here in West Oakland. Granted, they were more expensive than I thought they were, but that grocery store is really expensive anyway. But it was like she just grew significantly by taking these little baby steps. Her end goal was to create a company could support her family into the future and that she could bring her tamales and spread the love of tamales around the country. So even starting off just really small and taking baby steps can help you if you have an end goal in mind. So that's what I want to leave you all with. I appreciate you listening to me and my banter for a while. And hopefully I'll see you in class again or at one of these pop-ups that are happening around at Skyline and elsewhere. So appreciate you all.
Thank you.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
And I hope to see you at another pop-up. Okay.
We'll be there for sure.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. It
care.
was great talking to you. Bye-bye.